Jewish life. And so Chabad was always there to make sure that we had the matzah for Passover and celebrations for the holidays. So, and the most important part is that they made Jewish education available in Spanish, and at the level of the people that were either professionals or college students, that they can relate to it and they can get the education they didn't have so far. So I got involved in Jewish education. I started learning myself, and finally I discovered an aspect of Judaism that was very much mind-blowing, that pretty much put together many pieces of my Jewish life that I couldn't understand before. And so I started to learn more and more until I started full-time in a yeshiva academy, and from there I went straight to Israel. In Israel, I studied 3 years, and finally I was ordained as a rabbi. And when I came to New York, I studied in New York, but then I met my wife and we got married. And both of us wanted to do outreach. We wanted to bring the same opportunity to others. So go to a town where there is very little Jewish life and make Jewish life available and make Jewish education available to all ages. That was our main goal, that people should not be deprived from education. People who have questions about Judaism, about their culture, about anything, that they should be able to ask, and they should have plenty of material available. And they should have an experience as well. So the town we had in mind, believe it or not, was Tijuana. My wife is from New York, and she didn't want to leave the US. And my first language at that point was Spanish. I was fluent in Hebrew. I didn't know English back then when I got married 18 years ago. So I will communicate with my wife in Hebrew. And so I saw an opportunity came in Tijuana, and we moved to the south of San Diego, and I started working with the Spanish speaking. And then for different reasons, that opportunity didn't work out, and I was offered a position to start a new brand community in San Marcos. And that's where we moved 2005. And since there, then thank God we have a beautiful community now, and we do what we like. We love teaching, we love eating, as many Jewish people love eating. So my wife is a great cook, so we get to eat together and share our passions, either intellectual passions or any other passion. And
I was at your community a couple of weeks ago, and a beautiful spot in San Marcos. And I imagine 15 years ago, there was probably not as much going on out in that area. And it looks as if the community is growing up around you, and your community was full, and your wife was a wonderful hostess. She made me feel welcome the moment I walked in. The food was wonderful. Your children showed me around your home. And I just felt instantly welcomed into your community, which I really feel is a sense of your heart and the leadership that you bring. And what I know, and you're being very humble, but it is a fast growing Jewish community that people are coming together, though 15 years may not seem like it's fast, but at this point, it is a well-established, recognized Jewish community in San Marcos. But we have many people from the coast going there because of your vivacious youthfulness, the service I sat through, your personalness, and you were just very real and open and vulnerable with your heart and soul.
Well, I can tell you, ask those people coming if they remember my speech of last week. I don't think so, but ask them, what did my wife cook?
Yeah, well, I get it. They leave Seaside. They may not know what I said, but I sure feel good, But we build community, and I think at this time, with what's going on in our culture, that sense of community is imperative. We have been so separated, and it is having a community to come to be able to look at one another in the eyes and to share some food is just imperative. And one of the wonderful things I know about the Jewish culture is that it is about community, it's about tradition, and it's also having weathered some horrendous times or atrocities. And so our culture here in the US and the world is going through a rough time. I mean, with what's going on with COVID is just creating a division in family and friends, and the political polarization that is going on is scary for some. The economic times, who knows what's going on with that. And so what is some of your teachings that you share with your community to help bring a sense of comfort in times like this?
I was actually asked not long time ago, very recently, a similar question, which was how does your faith help you overcome this situation? What is it in your faith that that motivates you towards surviving this? So what I share with them is that it's very interesting how people of faith react to extreme situations like a pandemic. A person who is not a person of faith, the way he will react is, let's watch the TV, let's see the news, let's see what's happening with China, and where's the virus now, which variant are. A person with faith is like, let's find something in the Torah. Maybe we found the answer in the Torah. Why is this happening, right? So the question is, where in the Torah we start looking? So you have people of faith that looked at the Torah portion of Noah, and in that Torah portion, they learned that God destroyed humanity with a flood, and Noah was saved because he went inside the ark. So they learn from that God is bringing a bio flood. Mm-hmm. Our home is the ark. We're being commanded to be in lockdown. That's the ark. God is saving us, but God is destroying humanity. It's the end of the world. Some people of faith reacted that way. Then there are some who went to a different section of the Torah, and they went to the section of the Exodus from Egypt. And over there, what they learned is that God told the Hebrews, stay at home, don't leave, and I'm going to bring the last of the plagues that it's going to kill the firstborns of the Egyptians, and then you are going to be free from slavery. So my gosh, these people, they reacted. God is bringing the final redemption. The fact that not only the Hebrews need to be at home, but everybody's in lockdown. The entire humanity is in lockdown. It's because God wants to save us. So it's going to be the final Exodus. Wow, what are two extreme reactions. One, it's comparing the pandemic to a bio flood, and one is comparing the pandemic to the preparations for the greatest miracle in human history. So people came to me with that question, Rabbi, what's going on here? Are we dying, or are we getting ready for something really, really good?
Tell me, I want to know. Come on, you got me hanging on the edge of my
seat. We'll continue next week.
No. We still got a little more time here.
Well, I will tell you that the answer is that truly is our choice. I will give an example. You find from Holocaust survivors, God forbid, we should never went through what they went through. But I have to meet many. In my own family, I had Holocaust survivors. So you find survivors, and I'm not judging anyone. I'm just telling you facts of people that I met during my lifetime. And some survivors, never made it, again, they couldn't develop relationships, they couldn't develop a business, nothing. Depressed the whole time, and life was meaningless. You know. Then you have the other survivor that rebuilt his life, her life, and became, successful in financially. They rebuilt their business, and they made foundations, education, programs to educate about tolerance, and you see them with smiles and always positive and with a positive message, and you ask yourself, these people went through the same camp, right? It was the same camp, same nightmare, same everything. How can it be? How can it be such a different approach in life? And this is, again, not judging, obviously. I don't even know how will I be after going through something like that. So I'm not suggesting one is right and one is wrong. I'm just questioning in general, how can that be, right? So I think one of our fellow Jews, Einstein, had a good answer to it. Time is not just time is relative, but reality is relative. Because reality is what we made of it. You see, we can have something in front of us and we are looking at the same thing, but our understanding of what we are looking at may be totally different.
Sure.
You have a child looking at one thing, you have an adult looking at the same thing. Obviously, their understanding is very different. While the child is looking at the chocolate, the adult is looking at the sugars that they are inside, right? So reality is relative. Reality is in our mind. And the Kabbalah talks a lot about that God created the entire world inside of our heart. And what we perceive in this world truly depends on how developed we are spiritually. And the more spiritual that we become, is the more that we start perceiving a different reality in the outside as well. That explains everything. That it can explain the reaction of people towards, extreme situations as well. But with the pandemic, it's not any different. The pandemic can be looked at in many different ways. And like you said, unfortunately, sometimes that ability of looking at something in different ways brings to division, which is happening a lot in this country. But
so what are some of your teachings that would help someone to look at it in a higher way or a spiritual way? A way, the children sees the chocolate. I mean, how can we get back to that place of a greater trust? I know you're a Talmudic scholar, with the laws and those kinds of pieces. But what is the teachings of Judaism that would help, someone within the family or within the community to be able to see in a different kind of way, that they're caught up in the horror and they're caught up in the headlines? We are obviously caught up in this algorithm of being fed what we're looking at. We get more of what we're looking at, and we're going down that rabbit hole. We need to change, what our feed is, so we can begin to, receive more of the affirmative side of living. So in your teachings and in your faith, what would you share in a class of seekers? How Rabbi Yair, how can I shift my thinking? It hurts so much. I just see all this difficulty there. What are some of the things you'd share with them?
First of all, it's okay to feel bad. It's good to recognize what's wrong, because by recognizing what's wrong, we can fix it. Hiding the negativity keeps it alive. The Torah tells us that we need to remember the nation of Amalek. Amalek is the first nation that fought the Jews, and we need to remember it so we can erase them. We can erase their name. In order to erase their name, we have to remember them. Otherwise, they will exist in potential. So we have to make sure we always remember what they did. So remembering and knowing what's wrong in this world is not a bad thing. Becoming a part of that mess, it's a bad thing. We are here to fix.
Yeah.
We are here to fix the world. We were put here to fix the mess. We were never promised that we are coming into a perfect world. That was not the deal. We became partners in the creation, and we are here to fix it. We are here to bring a contribution to this world. When we become part of that mess, then we are not doing what we are supposed to be doing. So people, I think, and it's very interesting because it's also a cultural thing. You see people that went through, in Russia, or they went through so many wars and so many things, and the way they approach the pandemic, I'm not putting everybody in the basket, but in general, they're used to seeing evil. They're used to seeing negative. So then, okay, big deal. Well, that's what do we need to do? That's the question. But I think this country, thankfully, we have it really good in general, in comparison to many others. And that's why many people are being, it's very shocking when you get something like this. So the main thing is to understand that when we read the Torah, we already see time after time that the world is not perfect. So calm down. It reminds me when a child is doing something wrong and the father is reacting like, how can that be you are doing that? As if he doesn't do anything wrong, right? So the child is looking at the father and says, this guy is from a different world. He belongs in the moon, maybe. So he cannot relate to him. The father, if he wants to be successful with his kid, the first thing he should do is like, hold on. The only difference between him and me is that I learned how to cover up what I do. He didn't. So if we start putting things in perspective, then when we approach our kids, it's going to be in a completely different form, and our kid is going to be willing to take more what we want to tell him. The same thing applies here. When we feel like, what is this? How come negativity? That's because we didn't come into terms about what the world is about, what life is about. Life, it's not perfect, and we are here to fix it. So there is nothing to be, overexcited about what's happening. We just have to understand what is our mission in this. I will tell you even more. We experience this all the time. You want to get stronger. What is one of the things that you do? Exercising.
Right, of course.
Of course, right? Exercising makes you tired and makes you, aches in your muscles and everything. And that's what makes you stronger. We see it in nature, right?
Right.
So a woman before giving birth to a baby, the biggest blessing, the last seconds are very painful. If you want to jump high, you first go down on your knees. So you find in the law of nature so many indicators that before there is something good, there must be some descending first. There must be some challenge. So challenge is an opportunity for growing. There is a saying that a fly bangs its head against the glass, trying to get out of the container until it falls down exhausted and dies. The only thing the fly needed to do was to lift up the head and see that there was an opening.
Yeah, so right. So right. And I guess that's what we're being invited to do, is to see that there is a way out.
Yes, and there is a way out. There is a way out. When we bang our head against the reality that we always perceive, and we live our entire life thinking that this is what life is about, and we don't give our chance to explore, to maybe find something that will give us a different perspective in reality, then we are always banging our head against the glass.
Yeah. Hey, Rabbi Yair, got some questions coming in. And so I want to invite our viewers to continue to, write questions into the chat room, and I'll bring them to Rabbi. And so here's one that came in. Not sure who asked this one, but it says, "Your Rabbi, how can we learn to be one human family, not me versus you?"
Very good question. We can learn how to be one unit family when we understand what the me and the you are.
Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
I had a class from High Tech High that came to our place, and they wanted, they were studying different opinions and cultures. So they asked me, what is one of the messages, the great messages that Judaism brought to society? So I told them that in general, in history, societies always struggle to unite people. And normally they took two different approaches in order to unite them. One was the communist one. We are all the same. We are all the same, and the only one that matters is Mother Russia. You are nothing. You are all the same. So that approach obviously didn't work. It's a dictatorship. And it pretty much neglects the individuality, uniqueness of each person. In America, we are actually not quietly the same, obviously, but when we say we are all the same, we are all Americans, we are trying in some ways to, put aside our differences. And that never works because we are different. We have different history, we have different personalities, different way of thinking, different opinions. So society always had that conflict. How do we put people together without being a dictatorship?
Mm-hmm.
And without canceling the uniqueness of people? So this is what Judaism actually came and shed a new light about this idea. In Judaism, the idea that we are all different, it's a benefit. When you have one person, let's say all doctors serving God, but only doctors, that's beautiful, but doesn't say much about God. When you have only attorneys serving God, that doesn't say much about God. If you have a plain color, that's not beauty. The beauty in colors is when you have a mix. The mix of colors is what makes it beautiful. And this is exactly the idea. God created each individual with a uniqueness, with a personality, and with a talent. And that uniqueness is godly, according to Judaism. It's part of God's creation, and it's critical for that person's mission in life. So how do we make one people out of our differences? Is by appreciating our differences.
Right.
Not by convincing ourselves that we are not different, because we are, but by appreciating our differences and by understanding that our differences are also created by God with the purpose of bringing beauty in the creation, bringing, unique qualities to the creation that each one can bring. And that is what unites us. Unites us knowing that our differences are for a higher purpose, not for division, but for a higher purpose.
Yeah, higher purpose is definitely something that would unite people moving forward in a common direction. And sometimes when people are not comfortable with themselves, then they're not available to appreciate the difference because they're looking that I don't have I have enough. So I love that. That's beautiful. Hey, we've got more questions coming in. I just once again want to reiterate, our listeners, type them. They're coming in one after another. Here's some good one. Here's one. What is the difference between the Kabbalah and the Torah?
So there is no difference. The Kabbalah is okay. Let me give you. Let's go back to something I told you before. Reality has layers. You can look at one thing in one way. In the past, they looked at food as the source of nourishment. So grandmothers will come to their grandchildren with plates full of food, and they will force the child to finish that plate. Don't leave anything on that plate. Today, science revealed that it's not the mass what keeps us healthy,